So continuing on in the theme of conversion and changing paradigms so that we can begin to pick up on where I left off last time with regards to love and forgiveness and being able to see and experience the wonder and joy and meaning in life that God intends us all to experience. So we begin this presentation with the understanding that God wants our lives to be incredible, not ordinary, not mundane, and that we're each created perfectly because we belong to a world that God created that is perfect. Remember the teaser? I'm going to talk about and explain how and why the world is perfect, and in the world there is no hate and there is no jealousy and there is no fear. We'll talk about those things. And hopefully along the way we'll begin to understand that this incredible life that we have, that although it can be, if we let it, muddled up a bit with the choices that we make, ultimately it's perfect, and so are we, because we're made in the image and likeness of God. So to begin, I would like to suggest that we have a paradigm shift in our outlooks to one of service, right? To one of seeing all as gift, that we get a sense of gratitude and joy and wonder and meaning. Because far too often in the world and in our lives, I think that what we do is we have this approach. What can I get? What can I get from this situation? What can I get from work? What can I get from my relationship with my wife or my husband? What can I get from my friends? What can I get? What can I get? And that's a mistake, I would like to suggest. If we have a paradigm shift to, instead of what can I get, to what can I offer? That's the beginning of conversion of change that we're going to talk about right now. Changing from what I can get to what I can offer. What can I give? That's the call of Christ. What can I give? Because when we do that, we begin to see then that everything that happens in our lives, the 3 or 4 stories that I mentioned, cancer, divorce, false accusations, those were all gifts to me. They were all gifts. And on the surface, we're inclined to think, oh my God, you're crazy. We were joking in the back. Jason says, Doug, from now on your name is Job. Wow, right? But all of those things are gift because they change your perspective and your paradigm. Take, for example, divorce. It's a common occurrence in today's culture, unfortunately. And divorce can be likened to, you ever watch those nature shows when the volcanoes are erupting on the Discovery Channel and the lava wipes out everything in sight, right? That can be what it feels like when you go through a divorce. Everything is just wiped out. Life, friendships, relationships, just burnt to a crisp. But over time, if you watch the Discovery Channel enough or often enough, you know that the lava not only scorches and destroys everything in its path, which is true, but after a time, the life that grows up from the lava is more fertile than what was there before. And so it is in our lives. So that's why, in my case, I look back on that, even though it was a tragic event, as gift, because it enabled me to change my outlook. Whereas before, when I heard of friends that had divorce, for example, I might simply say, that's too bad. I'm sorry to hear that. And that's about all that I ever offered. I was on my way. But after having been through it, I make sure that when I hear of other people that go through it, and if I know them, I offer more than that. I offer them presence, not gifts, but my presence, and I offer them time and consideration. And it's much more than just a flippant remark about, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I'm more in tune with other people's pain and suffering because of the result of my own. That's the gift portion of this. And that we don't often spend a lot of time thinking about it in those terms. But when we do, we become grateful for them. And grateful for the events in life, right, that we've experienced. The good and the happy and the sad and the bad all become gift, and they lead us to gratitude. And gratitude leads us to joy. That's how we have and discover joy in our life. And God wants us to have joy-filled lives. He does. We're not made to be mundane or ordinary. We can have the most significant, amazing, wonderful lives that we could ever imagine. And here's the thing. You're better than anything that you could possibly imagine. You are. And that's what Christ came to earth to tell you. So the conversion that I would like to suggest to you today begins with this. Realizing that the world doesn't want you to experience that conversion. In fact, it's just the opposite. We're surrounded by depravity and narcissism and all of these things up here every day. We have to have more. We have to have success. We have to be thin. We have to be good looking. We have to be on time. We have to have a great job. We have to have the great relationships. We have to have a great family life. Blah, 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 blah. And if we don't, we're failures. So that's the world in which we live. And it makes us think that everything is dependent upon us, my ego, my career. And it leads us to a great lie in society. The lie of that believing we'll be happy when we have more. If I could just have more, if I could have more money, I'm going to be happy. If I could have more opportunity at work or at life, in relationships, whatever, I'm going to be happy. Recognition or fame. And you don't have to, I'm not talking about movie star recognition or fame. I want to be recognized for what I'm doing at work or wherever. Ego gratification. It's all about me. I'm the one that's responsible for my own success. That's the lie that society teaches us. And it's what we fall victim to. And it causes us to act and believe that if we only were to have more, we'll be happy. If I only had what they have over there in that house, I would be happy. You see that big house they're building up on the hill? Wow, if I could only afford to buy a house or build a house like that, I'd be happy. It's a lie. It's not true. Not true at all. The lie of more is one of the most destructive lies that we've been allowed to participate in. Jim Carrey, the comedian, has said that I wish everybody could become as famous and as rich as they've ever dreamed, and they could do everything they ever wanted to do, because then they would know that's not it. That's not the answer. So generally speaking, when we think about this conversion and this pathway to wonder, joy, and meaning, we all want to do better. We all want to have love. We all want to have success. We all want that. Those are natural inclinations. The thing is that the world teaches us that all of these things are defined in one way, and our faith says it's an opposite way. That's where we have to distinguish. But it's universal. And why is that universal, I wonder? Why do you think that most of us want to seek out God and truth and life? Most of us want to seek out good things and good outcomes for the people that we love and for ourselves. Most of us are good people. It's because the divine is in all of us. The great I am, as God named himself in the Old Testament in the book of Exodus. I am with you. I am in you. And Jesus reconfirmed that in the New Testament. Who are you? Jesus says, I am. I am the God who visited Moses in the burning bush on Mount Sinai. That's me. I'm him. And I'm in you. And so that's why we have this desire to do and be good. Every one of us, even the worst person that you can think of right now, has that desire in them, even though they don't make the choice to exhibit that. I believe this. And I think that when we begin to see this conversion, this process, the great I am inside of us, we begin to be able to stop operating from this, what I call this deficiency motivation. Because if I don't have more, and if I don't have that big house on the hill, I'm somehow a failure. I'm somehow not good enough. I don't have the same kind of clothes or the style or whatever that they do. I'm not as thin as I should be. I'm not as handsome as I should be. I'm not as well-liked as I should be. And if I could only have those things, I would be happy. That's deficiency motivation. We judge and we compare each other all the time. And we don't realize that when we convince ourselves that if I could only be different, if I could only be somehow better, that's not the answer, and that's not the perspective of the conversion that we need to experience in order to understand that the I am is within us and that you're already created perfectly, absolutely perfectly. If you're a parent of a child of any age, please don't ever say this to them again. Well, nobody's perfect. Please don't ever say that again, because you are. You're absolutely perfect. There's a difference between being perfect and created in the image of God, which I'm talking about, and the choices that you make. Some of the choices aren't perfect, but you, my child, are perfect. And we live in a world that's perfect too, by the way, and I'll get there in a minute. So we try to correct these things, don't we? This deficiency motivation, by getting more, clinging to these things. We want to be someone different. Some people in the world go through surgeries to be different. Some people get addicted to things because they can't measure up and they feel as if they need that to be better. So it's around us, and it's just this thing that we have, and this falsification, this big lie that comes to us in society. But what's the good news is that you're never going to be able to get enough, right? So we can just stop wanting more, because once you have everything that you think you needed, you'll get there, and you'll realize, well, God, I want more. I want more than this. I want more than that house on the hill. I want a bigger estate out in the country now, or whatever. You never get to the point where more satisfies you. And how do enlightened people, and how do we as Christians on this pathway to conversion understand and arrive at a place of joy and wonder and meaning in our life? We reflect on this. If you don't know how to appreciate what you have and where you are in life, then you don't need anything else. Because if you do get something else, you won't know how to appreciate that either. You'll just want more. The big lie. Or you'll want to be different, or you'll want it to be the way that it used to be. Or you'll say, why can't she be the way she used to be? Or why does she have to act like that? Or why did he have to do that? Why can't this place be like it used to be? That's all deficiency motivation, and it blocks us from seeing the potential of wonder, joy, and meaning in life in many, many ways. So enlightened people, people that get it, that are happy in the moment and in this world and in this life, they have one thing in common. They have enough. This is all I need. And I'm not talking about stuff. I'm talking about things like faith and family and friendships and meaning in those things. Right? This is happiness 101. We've all heard this before, but we need to be reminded, I think, from time to time. People who overcome adversity, the drunk driving accident that debilitates a young woman for 26 years, the divorce, the false accusations, etc. We see it. We don't operate as a place of deficiency or victimhood. I accept it. We accept it. We accept the circumstances. We don't blame. We move on. We accept what we've been through. We take control of our own predicament and our own choices. Sometimes we make bad choices, and sometimes there's repercussions. We deal with those choices. But most importantly, and here's what we really have to wrap our heads around, we see all that comes our way as a gift. Everything, you guys, everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's lessons to be learned and gleaned from that. So that enables you to transcend the adversity, the hardships, the lava that scorches your life into beauty and wonder and joy. When you have that conversion and that ability to see things as a gift. And this, again, it's not a platitude. That's the truth. That really does happen. If you're able to switch your perspective, wonder and joy and meaning, more than you could ever imagine, will begin to just pour over you. And it's a matter of how we realize these things. And here we go. I know that there's one thing that God can't do, and that's create something that's not perfect. So the world and in it is perfect, as I'm going to explain. The mountains, the ocean, the life within them, it's perfect. There's a choreography that goes on. Have any of you ever been scuba diving? I've been scuba diving, and when I go down and scuba dive, every single time, I'm always amazed at the life and the complexity and the choreography that's going on down there under the water. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. How do you know it's perfect, Doug? Well, just look at it. It's perfect. Evidence of the obvious is sufficient. The mountains, the sunrise, the sunset, the life within them, the newborn baby. It's perfect. You are perfect. How do you know? Look. You're perfect. There's no exceptions. Evidence of the obvious is all we need. And we forget this. We continually forget it. It's absolutely perfect. The stuff that we create, chairs, shoes, clothes, lights, whatever we create is not perfect. And so in the world, in this perfect world, here's the bombshell. The world is perfect. There is no hate out there. There is no jealousy out there. There is no fear. There's no one out there that can hurt your feelings. Nobody. There's nobody out there that can embarrass you out there or in here, because the world is perfect and we're perfect. It's not even possible. When you think about how she hurt my feelings or he hurt my feelings, right? How is it even possible that someone could think that? Because your feelings come from how you think. How you think. They don't come from God and the world. The world is perfect. We've already admitted and bought into that. Nobody can hurt your feelings unless you give them permission to. Nobody can embarrass you. There is no hate out there and jealousy and anger and fear unless it's by the way we think. Now, there are some scary situations about, having somebody hold a gun to your head and, oh my God, I'm afraid. I'm not talking about those kinds of things. When I talk about perfection, I'm talking about us being created in the likeness and image of God in a perfect world that He designs. And we, because of our decisions and the things we do, the things we make, we muddle that up a bit. But if we have this change of perspective and attitude and paradigm shift from what can I get to what can I give, what can I offer, how can I see all as gift, this becomes more obvious and more easily attainable. It's never easy to completely do this, but it's a shift that we have to make if we want to see wonder, joy, and meaning in our life. And that conversion process sometimes takes people to remind us that that's what we have to do, and we have to reflect on that and decide that we're going to do that. So the current state of your life and the predicaments in which you find yourself are nothing more than a reflection of your state of mind and the way that you think. God, really, my ex-husband really gets on my nerves. No, he doesn't. It's the way you think. It's your reaction to that. I wish that they could be the way they used to be. Why do they always have to take their side? We're muddling it up. It's the way they think. So your state of mind and your state of happiness, in other words, what we're saying here is it's on you, right? I have a choice to react in ways that either can enable me to see wonder, joy, and meaning, or I can react in ways that absolutely prevent me from doing that. So what's inside of us? When we encounter things, once we get a hold of thinking, when we understand that it creates everything that we can experience and we can have, this is what I really want you to wrap your heads around. It's because of the way we think that allows you to have as much in this life as you want. You can have the most extraordinary life imaginable just by the way you think. Just by the way you think. If you're constantly thinking that things are lousy and it's not any good, and you're feeding yourself all of this stuff and all of this anger and this hate and resentment and refusal to forgive, yeah, your worldview is going to be dim because you fed yourself all of this. 99%, this is from Dr. Wayne Dyer, 99% of what we can't see is what we are. It's our essence and our consciousness. It's what looks out into the world from behind these eyeballs. What we are, all in here, is 99% of who we really are. 99% of it. And what is it really? It's our soul. That's it. The way that we react and see is much more, we're much more than just clothes. We're not our resume, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We're not that. We're much more than that. At the beginning, we can take a lesson. In the womb, we have everything that we need to survive and be happy. None of us remember that, but we have that. As we grow and we come into the world, we get muddled up because of the way we think. We forget. We still have everything that we need to be happy within us. We don't need other stuff. We don't need more. We don't need to operate from deficiency motivation. We simply forgot that we already have everything we need to be happy. We have ourselves and we have the way that we think to be happy. That's the key. Conversion of thought. So becoming conscious of what's inside us. I don't think you can see the orange story up there. So imagine I have an orange in my hand. And I squeeze the orange as hard as I can. What comes out of the orange? Juice. Why? Because that's what's inside of an orange when it's squeezed. Does it matter if I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and squeeze the orange? What if I have my mom, who's back there in the back there, squeeze the orange? Does that matter? What if one of you guys squeezes the orange? What if my boss at work squeezes the orange? My ex-wife or my son or anyone? Does it matter? What if I use a tool to squeeze the orange? Still juice. What happens when your boss squeezes you, when your ex-spouse squeezes you, what comes out? What's inside? So if you're angry, if anger is what comes out, that's what's inside of you. If jealousy is what comes out, that's what's inside of you. If fear and hate and other things come out, if love comes out, that's what's inside of you. What we put inside, again, a choice of conversion, what we put inside is what comes out. So concentrate on when you're squeezed by in-laws, wives, spouse, ex-spouse, kids, boss, what comes out, and begin to change. Begin to change at work and at home with regards to how those things happen. It's part of the conversion. It's part of seeing the world in a new paradigm and being able to say, all right, you know what, I'm making a choice to be positive and put positiveness inside of me. It's not easy, but it's a paradigm shift. So these souls of ours that we have, like a vase, our bodies are earthly, right? We're only temporary people here. This is not it. This is not our home. We're travelers. Longfellow says, my soul is but an empty vase, and what I put inside of my soul is what I choose to bring forth. Let only beauty be in my soul. Let only love be the light that shines forth from my soul. Let me make the wise choice to put thee inside of me, God, so that you come out. The divine presence intertwines, and we're drawn to do the good, and we have this beckoning, all of us do. Beckonings that lead you to go through the RCIA process, perhaps. Beckonings that lead you to enter into relationships of various kinds. The marvel of a sunset, right? All of you ever seen a great-looking sunset before? It's God beckoning to you via his perfect world and this perfect creation. What about this emotionally moved experience that some people get when they're at the theater, the live theater, or a movie, or a song, or a concert? It's God beckoning to us through humanity. We can be God to each other, and we're drawn to that. What about the newborn baby? Obviously, an obvious example, God's presence. All of these things that we seem sometimes to forget, the purity and so forth. What about helping somebody in need? That's God beckoning you to be God to the world and to the people in it. That divine beckoning, the I am that was placed in there at the very beginning of the talk, that's what draws you to do good, and it is God himself. And it makes perfect sense that we're called and beckoned to be God. That's part of our faith, to be God to each other. Anything that we do to express that divine nature of God is what draws us to him in the first place. And so how do we know and recognize God then? It might be the next, the logical question to ask. Well, primarily Jesus, obviously, is how we recognize God. On earth, Jesus was God. And if God, who causes us to react to sunsets and sunrises and babies and theater and those in needs, all of that in beauty, it's God that opens the roads, right? He's in the mountains, he's in the life, he's in the ocean. He's the reason the choreography exists in the world. And so that if we can be God and strive for that love and that beauty, there's a lot of things that come to us and strike us in moving ways. The story of Down syndrome. Some of you in other talks have heard me talk about Michael because he's so special. I have two sons, both are special. Michael was born 13 years ago with Down syndrome. His godparents, Mo and Bob, are here in the audience as well today, and I'm glad they're here. But I want to talk about conversion just for a few minutes with regards to him. You know, when the diagnosis, when Tracy was pregnant and we had Michael, we didn't have any of the tests or whatever. We just were going to have our newborn baby, and we didn't know that Down syndrome was going to be part of it. And when Michael was born, a million thoughts went through my mind. Bam! A million thoughts. Down syndrome, you hear those words. Is he going to live? Is he going to die? Can I handle this? Is he going to have friends? Is he going to have relationships? Can I handle this? Is he going to get married? Is he going to fall in love? Can I handle this? See the recurring, can I handle this? That old selfish, can I handle this? So 1,000,001 questions go through your head. Do we give him up for adoption? Went through our heads, if I'm totally honest with you. And then the word that we never say in our household, but if I'm honest with you, we thought it, is he going to be retarded? Is that what this means? Can I handle this? And so the conversion of seeing what some might consider to be tragic, I promise you is beautiful. He's perfect. He's absolutely perfect. He's in sports. He wins the 50-yard dash in the 50-mile, the Special Olympics. He has friends like crazy. Michael, high five down the hallways at school. High five, hey. They dote on him. They protect him. Is he going to have friends? Yes. What was seen as a potential tragic beginning has become a blessing, and it's because of a conversion of thought. If God himself were to come down today, right now, and say, Doug, I'd be happy to make Michael a typical young boy, I would get on my knees and kindly refuse or decline that offer, because he's perfect, just the way he is. And he's a mirror of God. If we each had a little bit of what they have in them, the world would be a better place. First of all, I'm telling you, that's the truth. They have no venom and prejudice. They see the world with an unbelievable amount of beauty and love. They love everyone. They're almost always happy. I wouldn't change a thing. In fact, there's two statistics. One is frightening and one is very happy. 94%, that's the frightening one. 94% of every prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome is aborted. 94%. I can't handle this. Death. On the other side of that coin, there's a waiting list 2 years long for people that want to adopt babies that have Down syndrome. Because those of us that know want more of that. It's incredible. And it's simply a matter of perspective. Plug that into any avenue in your own life. It doesn't have to be, kids born with intellectual disabilities. It could be anything that you're going through. It's a matter of perspective to see wonder and absolute joy and meaning. For me, I see that in Michael every time I see him. Wonder, joy, and meaning. And it's phenomenal. And my point is that it could have been, people see that as so tragic sometimes before they know the situation, and it's not. Just as in your life, when things seem to be tragic, most of the time they're really not. They might seem that way at the beginning, but all is gift. All is gift. We remember, we see it as gift, we become grateful, gratitude, and then from gratitude comes joy. And that's how it happens. That's how it works. So then, once we answer that divine beckoning and we see that, yes, I'm changing my perspective to beauty, the world is perfect, I can control how I react to that by the way that I think, I begin to see wonder, joy, and meaning. It opens up, and God's always with us in all those ways, guiding us to him in the things that might seem to be terrible, yet they can be a blessing. When we can change, again, from what can I see to what can I get, I'm here to tell you, an incredible mountain of blessing will be heaped upon you. My Down syndrome story is just one example. I'm sure in each of your own private lives, you've got stories where you can look back in hindsight and say, yes, even though I thought that was the end or some sort of tragedy, yeah, there was some good that came out of that. So we have to think about that, though. It's not easy. It takes a higher level of consciousness. All of those things, death, disease, all of those things can be seen as gift, part of the conversion. Gratitude leads to joy. And if we don't do that, if we don't have that paradigm shift, we risk it. We risk this, losing or not being able to recognize the wonder and the joy and the meaning that we know is in life. We risk becoming bitter, unhappy, or discouraged. Anybody seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life? One of my favorites. So at the beginning of the movie, you may recall God and St. Joseph are having this conversation about the movie's main character, George Bailey. Well, we're going to have to send somebody down to earth, says God. St. Joseph, send for Clarence. So they send for Clarence, George's guardian angel, right? You sent for me, sir? Says Clarence. Yes, Clarence, we're going to have to send you down to earth. There's a person down there that needs our help. Splendid. Is he sick? Says Clarence. And God says, no. Worse. He's discouraged. because he can't see the wonder, joy, and meaning of life. And George Bailey was discouraged. He wasn't sick. Being discouraged is worse than being sick. And if we're discouraged in the muck in our lives, and if we're unable to see the wonder and the joy and the meaning that wait on the other side of a paradigm shift, then we'll always be discouraged. We'll always be George Bailey. But if we can see beyond it, and if we can see that there's life beyond the things that we're going through at the moment, the paradigm is wonder, joy, and hope are there for us. So that I am, the fullness of God in everything that we are, it's all in us, it's all hopeful, it's all comforting, and it's all helpful. I am is the light of God within us. And so we're not who the world says we are. We're not narcissists and egomaniacs, and we're not our resumes, and we're not meant to have discouraged lives. We're meant to be happy, wonderful, incredible, and we're meant to have meaning in life through Jesus Christ. As he says in the scriptures, I have come to give you life and to give it to you in full so that you can experience all of the wonder and the joy that life has to offer through me. And if you have this perspective and this paradigm shift, life becomes that for you. And I'm here to be the one to tell you, I'm speaking on behalf of our Lord, right? That Jesus is the way to that. He's the one that gets us there. He wants us to know that we're meant for all of this. Our lives are meant to be wonderful, joyful, and meaningful. We have to feel the light of God within us, and then we're called to be that light. We have to be it to the world. We have to change the world's paradigm. And I'm convinced we'll probably never see it in our lifetime, this whole conversion. And I think that what I also believe is this. There are pockets of people like you throughout the world that are searching, they're trying to figure out what this is all about, that they're searching for the Lord, and they're searching for God, and it's because of these pockets of people that the entire world just doesn't spin off into chaos. I'm convinced of that. That this is why the world remains somewhat stable, because there's pockets of you faithful people around every corner of the world, searching for the good and looking for the good. So that conversion, that process of looking at the life that we have and seeing it in a different way really is meaning that we're possessed by the Holy Spirit and we allow him to do his work in us. So we accept the I am, and we have to let these things die. The judging, the criticizing, the condemning, the focusing on what's missing, focusing on what we don't have or what we can't have. If we have those things, we're living exactly where the devil wants us to be. And the devil is real, and he's out there to trick you. And we can't take that lightly. So how do you do it? Beginning to end this conversion, listen to the I am, the little voice inside of you. You all have it. You shouldn't do that. Forgive that person. Why don't you make a phone call to somebody? Why don't you make a phone call to Aunt Jean? Thank you. In California. Sorry. Why don't you make a phone call to Aunt Jean, who's sick? Why don't you do something? And you have this little voice that nudges you, and this beckoning inside of you. We all do. It's the voice of God. Don't underestimate that. The voice of God can be very loud sometimes, very persistent. That burning desire, right? Like the burning bush. You have this burning desire to do something that you've always wanted to do, that's righteous and good and faith-filled. The voice of God nudging you on to do it. Don't underestimate that. Don't underestimate it. Righteous passions in your life can be direct conduits of how the Lord wants to interact with you to do something for the world, for each other, something nice for your family. It doesn't have to be grandiose. It can be very simple. For those of you that work in the business world and have people that report to you, a kind letter or a nice note, a handwritten note to a family member, powerful impacts. Don't do it with email. We've lost the art of handwritten letters in this society. Write a handwritten note to somebody that you love today and mail it tomorrow. Put it on a napkin note. Yes, thanks, Carl. So when you listen to the I am, reflect. Here's for your reflection for all this with regards to conversion. When you live in the light and you reject darkness and all that's associated with it, you understand that there's no more judging, no more hate, criticism, forgiveness, and you begin to turn that perfect world into what we talked about earlier. There really isn't any of that if you can get this thinking down right. There's none of it out there if we can just think right. Get it? You understand? I think that if we wrap our head around that, that's the key. So let that profound truth be the beginning to the I am, to the light, and to wonder, joy, and meaning in your life. That's what conversion is. That's what it means to see things in the sense of what can I give and what can I offer, as opposed to this way that most of the world thinks about what can I get? What can I get from this? That's the big difference. So thank you for your time and your attention.